So today I'm joined by Thad Cox, and this has been a long overdue conversation. I mean, Thad is somebody that I've known in the industry for what is it, like 10 years now. We
It is a long
finally
time.
got to meet in person a few months back at Palooza, and since I'm getting back to doing the podcast, especially since we just met up in person as well, I thought this was the perfect opportunity to speak with you, learn more about your journey, and allow the my audience to get to know you in the process. So, I think the best place to start with this would be so I mentioned prior to hit and record that I would really like to go through your journey, and I know here today you've got Oakmont House, which is your design studio. Would you describe it as that?
Yes, that would be accurate. Yes, that's
Sure.
where
Okay.
most things end up. Yeah.
So here today you have your own design studio, which is I feel is a dream for a lot of creative people. But I always think it's important for people to have an understanding of the background behind that. That you didn't just, wake up one day and decide, you're going to do this. It was a gradual progression. I have done a little bit of research into this, but I want you to sort of tell your own story. So I know that you got that you did a degree in graphic design, and that you shifted to work in marketing. But do you want to share some of that early story of how you originally got into design, branding, marketing, and so on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's that thing of they say that when you look backwards, it's easier to connect the dots. So I can tell you now, like none of this, there was no strategy to this. It was, or if there was, it was very short. It wasn't. There was no long-term thinking. So yeah, I've had quite a varied career. As I said, I did a degree in graphic design at Kingston. I always had a real love for sort of creativity, so I punted that sort of toward the end of the degree to try and get a job in advertising. And I worked in advertising for probably about a decade as an art director and creative director, mainly doing kind of TV ads for quite big brands, which I loved. That was fantastic. Along the way, I got addicted to football coaching and did my coaching badges through the London FA. I got a job as Fulham's creative director of their academy. So not Fulham. I did my badges through Fulham. It was Brentford actually, but I got really into the football coaching side of things. So I was doing that alongside the advertising, and it was around that kind of time. Advertising was. I was so happy in it. I really enjoyed the people I worked with and the opportunities it gave you. But I just had my kids, so it was a case of I was definitely aware that like missing out on weekends and evenings was starting to kind of it was definitely a factor. And we have a hotel and restaurant in Cornwall. And my parents were really struggling with that. And they said, would you consider coming back to run it for a couple of years? And so we thought, well, it'll give us something to do. We can stay down there for a couple of years, be nice for the kids, and then we can come back. And that couple of years probably ended up being around 10, 12 years, actually, where I ran the hotel and the restaurant. During that time, we were very lucky. I had a great team of people. It was very successful. And I guess from a design point of view, I didn't give up the freelancing. So quite often I was freelancing on reception. So I'd sort of managed to do both, running those businesses and freelancing. And then when we decided to switch that from a hotel to a holiday lets, we split it into three holiday lets. That is when I started my studio because I wanted to do that full time. I kind of always wanted to do the branding and design full time. And I think the branding allowed me to combine a lot of the creativity I'd learned in advertising and then kind of my traditional design background. So that's what we did. And now I run that and I run my studio. And then I've been running my studio probably for about 10, 12 years now. And we do sort of a range of different projects for a whole range of clients. I've been quite lucky to work on some quite big stuff. And now I mainly split my time doing the branding work within the studio, and then I offer a couple of other services. So one is called the Signature Service, which is where we build out a unique offering or service for our clients. And the other thing is the Creative Heist, which is where we run like pitching, but through the lens of a Hollywood heist movie. So as you can sense, can't stay interested or focused for long, but that's what I'm doing currently, and I'm very happy doing it.
I know one thing that has run through all of that is the creative side. So even though you've worked in different sectors, like within the hotel industry, and you've done your football coaching and other things. There is this common theme from when you was quite younger to now, where you've had that interest in business and the creative side. I'm really curious. So you mentioned that while you was working within the hotel industry with your family, that you did the work on the side, basically, that you was still doing a little bit of graphic design work while doing that job as well. Do you feel that if you didn't do that, like say if you just went that 12 years and you did no design work at all, do you think that you would be in the position where you would be able to have built your own agency, or did that play a pivotal role?
I think one thing, I think if I'd taken a break for 12 years, I'd be concerned at the fact that I hadn't done that. You know what I mean? Like, where's the passion gone? Mm-hmm. So I think it kept me sane, but also it was kind of, I really wanted to keep doing it. The best thing about running the hotel was it taught me about business. I think that, because it's a real sort of Jekyll and Hyde thing, as in the way I would have run my design freelance business was kind of quite reactive and quite instinctive. Yet when I had to be the hotel manager, I knew all the figures, I knew the numbers, I was obsessed with sort of getting it all right. We also had a Michelin star for a while as well, so I knew what it felt like to have to be involved in that. And also just when you had people then pitching to you, so agencies would pitch to us to do our website or do photography and all these kind of things. So you really saw it from both sides, and that was really super helpful. So it's very much, I think I learned a huge amount from being the client, and also understanding your figures, and having to be very, very organized and knowing exactly how much things were costing, what your budgets were, what you were spending, and then also because it was a seasonal business, there's all of that, and then the whole thing is also you're building culture, you're managing people, and all of that I think has really, really helped me when it came to setting up my own thing, because I enjoy doing that, but I'm much more business savvy than I would have been if I'd, I guess, kept freelancing and just eventually set up on my own, I suspect.
So I know you talked through that then, but when you talk about things like the numbers, so I consider myself a graphic designer. So most of my projects are logo design projects. I do provide a little bit of strategy within that as well, but I don't see myself as a strategist, and my background prior to this has been working with like design companies, like leading up teams within companies. I'm really curious, when you do talk about the numbers, are you able to sort of share what specifically do you mean by that? Is it like how much you charge, how you track things? What are you referring to when you do talk about the number side of things?
Yeah, so I think the big thing for the number side of things for me, the two things that happened running the hotel is it broke my relationship with time. So where I would have said, I say 9 to 5. When I worked in advertising, it was 8 till 8. So it was long days. But in the hotel, the shifts were different. So I'd start at 6, finish at 10. That'd be breakfast. Then I'd be off in the day. Then I'd do 4 o'clock till 10. Reception in the evening. So that was really interesting, because you're kind of like, oh, I've got time in the day to do stuff, and if it's quite quiet, I can also do stuff on reception. So you're learning to manage your time differently, and it helped if, like, I had a lot of clients based in America, so then they would come on later and I could be receptive to that. But from the numbers point of view, I was very sure of what my costs were. So for me, when it came up to pricing things, I knew exactly what I had to price to break even, and then I knew I had targets I wanted to hit to be profitable. And so understanding the difference between revenue and profit, and understanding that, how much you've got to pay towards taxes and all these other bits and bobs, that really helped me, because I guess when you're pricing a design project, I have to factor in what are my personal costs and then what are my business costs. And that gives me a baseline figure to then work off. And that increases over time. So a 4-week project and a 6-week project cost a different amount for me. And I found that I was doing projects that would be quoted for, say, 4 weeks, and they would drag on by a couple of weeks, and I wouldn't think anything of it, but it was only like, oh, I'm actually losing money now. The profit I'd factored in is being eaten away because I'm not finishing it enough. And it was the thing of once I understood that, and then because again in the hotel you would work out, right, if we have this many rooms, I need this many staff, therefore the average cost of a room is going to cost me this, therefore I need to be charging that to be breaking even, I need to charge this to make enough profit. And so you're very, the way I would price all of our services, and more importantly negotiate with people. So when people would say, look, have you got any deals, or what's the best price you could do, I was aware of what I could and couldn't give away. So when it came to pricing my own work, I always made sure that I was breaking even and providing for my family. And then I would make sure I would try and stretch myself to be pricing to be, so I'm paying myself a salary, I'm putting money aside. And I think that was a big switch for me, because I just figured if I could, I estimated my bills, and I was like, well, if I can cover that, I'm fine. But I didn't really factor in how long are you going to be working on this project for. And the thing that actually, one of the projects that really hit home was this lady who lived locally. She was an illustrator, and she wrote a book called Sparkle Puss. And it was a fictional book she'd made up about a cat and some chocolate, and it was based on our hotel and in the garden. And she was sort of saying, I really want to get this book designed. Do you know any designers? And I thought, oh, well, I might be able to help her. She seems very nice. And I said, look, I can design the book. It's not like huge. I think it's like 30 pages. I said, look, I'll do it for 600 quid. I was really happy with that. And she was like, it's quite a stretch, but okay. I think that project lasted more than 6 months. It just dragged and dragged and dragged. And in the end, it was like, oh God, I wish I just said no. And and it's that thing of you then go, oh, if only I'd priced this properly, or I'd been more strict on the deadlines, or had a better process, I wouldn't have been put in this position. So for me, after that, I was always very aware of, and also like having systems and processes in the hotel to make sure everything was done for quality control and efficiency. So again, if I'm running a project, I'm making sure it's as efficient as possible, and I try and stick to the same period of time so I can control those costs. So really, for me, that was what that taught me. And then I think what also, which was quite nice, is it made me less concerned about what other people were charging, because I found that often you go online and people will say, you know, I've landed these massive projects. And I used to kind of feel inadequate. You know, you go, well, they must be better than me. I've been doing this ages and I can't get that kind of money. But again, because I had a business coach through the hotel, he would be going on about, yeah, but how much of it is profit? Like revenue is all very well, but profit's the thing we want here and we want to work at. So again, you detach yourself from being in this comparison sort of league of people where the top people charge the most. And then you go, well, I don't care. Like, good for you. Like, as long as I'm profitable and I'm able to put money towards like a deposit on a house or pay for a holiday, then for me, that's the main thing. And then it became about, well, if I know what I have to charge, if I can become more efficient at doing it in a shorter period of time, then that frees up more time. So I'm starting to take back control of what I'm doing with my family. So for me, a lot of that was what I learned in the hotel. And that was just because I had to, because you just got people expecting you to know. And every week you're doing the bookkeeping and the figures. And we had it with them when I had our salon as well. It's the same thing. Every week I'm doing the figures. You're looking at this and you're getting quite granular, as in you don't need that many staff for that period of the day. You know, they're wasting shampoo or whatever here. You just get very, very particular. And then but it took me a while though. Like, it was a complete weirdo. I would be very, very relaxed in my freelance business, as going, how much do you want? Whatever you think you can get, mate. That was kind of like, you know, what's their budget for a long time. And then you talk to me in hotel manager mode, or like restaurant, like looking at the figures, and you'd be very, very different, very much more objective. So it took me a while. I'm not saying this is easy, but that business, running a business, even if you started like a Redbubble store and you're selling merch and you have to work out what your margins are on your products, even that as an exercise is interesting, because you kind of go, well, I can see what everyone else is charging, and can I justify this price, and how many will I sell at, and maybe if I reduce the margin but I'll sell more. Like, it's an interesting metric to teach yourself about market demand and pricing. So
I think one of the things that you mentioned, Alec, you mentioned that project with the lady in the book. I know with a lot of my logo design projects, something that I factor in is to quantify literally everything. So I had some really early projects where, you know, this was when I was still working full time for for another company. So I any project I took on was kind of like for fun, really. So early on, I thought I could get away with unlimited changes, basically, and
Yeah,
I
yeah,
thought I could get control over this. I'm not going to have the problems that the company I worked for have, because I genuinely naively thought I'm like the clients I'm going to work with aren't going to be like that. But that was very naive. And I've since learned that anything like round of changes, time spent on a project, literally every single little thing within the project is quantified in some shape or form. And I think that's really useful for, say, like scenarios like that project with the book. um if we're going over a certain amount of changes, there's a cost to it. What is that cost? It's all like detailed out in the contract, so I know when projects start that um I've got a good idea of how long a project typically takes. Worst case scenario, it's going to take this long, and then I can factor that in. And like you become less concerned about what competitors are doing, because you know that you're covering your
yeah.
costs,
You're
your living
profitable for
costs,
you.
your
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So it works for me. So I think all of that's a really good point.
You want to give
So
the illusion of control. So, like a menu is illusion of control because you think you have choice, which you do, but the restaurant has determined the choice in advance. So they haven't just said what do you fancy tonight. And I think in the project it's the same thing. You want to be able to allow the client to feel they have plenty of opportunity to give feedback and include them in the process. But it's all being taken care of. So like the same way that if you're running a restaurant and you want to try and sell dessert, the way you would clear the tables of going, can I get you anything else or just the bill? Or who's got room for dessert? It's two different options. And it's like one is upselling the other, one is getting you off the table because they've got other people coming in. You don't notice the difference particularly. But for me, that would be the thing of like, as you said, if you can make the process as controllable as possible. I do believe little things like the language you use in order to, like we've all had meetings where it's gone really well. And I'm very tempted quite often to go, so just to clarify, we're happy to go with route one with a few elements of route two. And I'll say, look, if you're happy to kind of sign that off now, I can get started right away. And usually they'll go, yeah, that sounds good. I'll give them time if they change their mind, but I'm definitely looking, as you say, to not, the unlimited revisions thing can be dangerous because it just becomes the pattern. So I'd recommend if you can get down to a number of revisions that you feel you still have control over the project and you can create good output and just run that every time and use the language to reinforce the way that's going to work. I think everything's fine with that.
I think with this type of thing, something that I do when things go right is because I have a productized, systematized
Yeah.
product offering. And logo design falls into that. So every step of the process, I have set in stone processes, templates, documents, everything like that. Like it's a very predictable, repeatable system throughout every step of the way, and I know exactly what's going to happen in every scenario, from the good situations to the bad situations. Where I personally slip up is when I do something different to what I normally do. So I don't normally do web design very often anymore, even though I used to design websites in my previous full-time position, and it's something that I can do because I don't have that predictable, repeatable system and processes in place. That's when there's the scope creep and the issues where it ends up costing too much, just because I haven't factored any of that into contracts or scenarios.
Yeah.
I find it interesting what you said here, because if you think like a menu, all of those are predictable, repeatable products.
Yeah, they have to be. They have to be because otherwise the kitchen would just be a nightmare.
And I think
But
that's the same for design, though. Do you not
it
think?
is, yeah. Yeah, no, again, it's the illusion of control because I've had this conversation with someone about like, well, surely having a process removes all creativity. I was like, well, if you go to a tailor and they do a bespoke fitting, what do you think happens? It's a process. It's just the bit that is bespoke to you is the bit that matters. The rest of it is whatever they do every time. They don't start from scratch every time. They systematized process. The only way you can survive is doing that because you control your costs and you control the outcome. And the thing is, I remember a long time ago, I was listening to this guy called Jack Butcher, who I quite like, and he said that clients are coming they want to see the outcome of your process. That's what they're coming for. So without the process to determine the outcome, that's where it's hard for people to pick you, because they want to see like, oh, so you've done, that's how you work, and it generated that result for that type of client, and you've done it repeatedly and it's worked every time. I want that certainty. So yes, you're completely right. And I think the other thing I say to people is we've all stayed in hotels when it's time to check out, and often we would remind people at breakfast of when the checkout time was and when their bill was ready, because nobody wants to check out late and get fined. I don't want to fine them. But again, if you're just reminding people with your communication, they're not surprised at what's coming up. And I think sometimes the hospitality thinking is really helpful. Just good communication eliminates all of this kind of back and forth, because you try and explain like, this is what we're doing, this is what's coming up next, this is what I need from you. And it's really, now they feel understood and involved, and it's much easier.
Interesting. Out of curiosity, with your agency, is everything like a menu now because of this?
Not really, but it's productized, as in like I want to run the best process I've got each time, because it gives me something to build from. So it's very much whatever I run, I'm looking to improve it with each iteration. So we've got it sort of dialed in, so we're happy. But I remember before I'd run like workshops and all these kind of things, and they'd be slightly different. And it's good because you're learning and experimenting, but it just meant that I think it's just that thing of also like technology evolves, AI is improving. You realize that, okay, having a transcript available versus having notes before, having a recording available versus, like everything's slightly different. So you want to be able to say, how can I leverage that to give a better service to the client? And so for me, as you said, having templates and everything prepared, it means that it frees up my time to really spend on the work and on the creative. And they don't know that it's a template. I mean, you don't get. I mean, at McDonald's everything is a process. Lego, everything is a process. You don't get disappointed by that, because your experience is unique. It's what you experience is what you care about. So it just is. I know from a business point of view, it's much easier to do that, because you control your costs and the outcome, and people will come to you for the outcome. That's the thing.
Yeah, there's a book that I read several years ago, The E-Myth Revisited, which is a really good book, and that goes into processes, systems.
It's all about bakery, isn't it? Is that right? She takes over her aunt's bakery. Is that the one?
It's so long ago that I've read it. It's like a good 10, 15 years I read the book, so I can't remember specifically what the book covered, but I do what's kind of stuck with me is the processes and the systems, because if you can imagine, a lot of people, when they want to start their own company, they're used to working in a company, not on a company. So when you are, say like you work for a design studio, they've been super successful, and then you leave, a lot of designers or entrepreneurs, people that are starting out companies, they struggle, and then they can't succeed, and it's because they're working in the business rather than on it. So this goes through how you should be working on your systems, your processes. And I think McDonald's is a perfect example, even though I know it's food, but they have very set in stone structures and systems for everything. So you could literally swap out any person. They don't have to be skilled in any way, because somebody has planned it, structured it, and worked out what happens in every possible scenario. And I that stuck with me, and it's why I'm so in favor of productized, systematized businesses. But it's also really hard when you're a designer, because I frequently have clients that say, can you help with this? I'm like, sure. It's extra money coming in, and I'm not going to say no to that because, I've got certain numbers that I want to hit and it's just a no-brainer. But the more I move away from the systematized stuff that, where I've got templates, processes, and all that sort of stuff, that is always where, if something's going to go wrong, is always in those scenarios rather than the situations where I've just got a set in stone process. And like you said, it's got freedom, so you still can be creative, and the client doesn't feel like they are just a cog in your system.
Well, you
So
can
there's
all,
still the creativity and so on.
yeah, well, they call it a turnkey business, and that's why McDonald's franchise is worth so much, because you just literally they turn a key and it all works. They've worked it out for you. I remember when we used to go and present ideas to McDonald's, you could have anything you wanted from the current menu in reception, because they're training everyone how to cook it or how to do it, like in McDonald's. I want to say it's called McDonald's University. It's somewhere in North London, but it's amazing, like that whole franchise thing. And I was teaching people about processes. And I went to Starbucks, which again is another turnkey business. And they, if you ask them, the one where we are in Windsor, I asked him, I said, have you got your manual, your process? Can I have a look at it? And he's like, yeah, sure, here it is. And you see it's like a big thing, and they just go through it, and you can see everything is broken down. And it is so like, it's a weird one, but as you say, we've all been to Starbucks and we feel there's an element of customization. I can have it pretty much however I want, but it's more interesting to watch it happening, like what people do at each station, what they say. They've all been trained. I mean, it's not as fun when you work there, but that's why they're so profitable. Have you read Built to Sell by John
Build
Warlow?
to Sell, yeah, that's another book that's similar. That one
So
actually
that's
focuses
nice.
on logo design
It does.
specifically,
I was going to
which
say that's
makes it
probably
very
more relevant,
interesting.
because I listened to the audiobook years ago, and it was it's quite nice, isn't it? It's almost like a diary. He goes to see his mentor, and slowly throughout the book, he goes from a chaotic agency that does everything to basically doing just logos. And it's really interesting to see that kind of. And I guess you're building it so that if you can't do it, you don't have to. That's the thing, is the test of. I know that one of the things I used to do, which I found useful in the beginning, was I would take on a project to learn how to do it. So where I would always do it myself, and as you say, there's bits where you can sort of fudge it a bit, or like, well, I know how to do that, I'll just do it. But I would take a project on, like a smaller project, and pay a freelancer to do it, and I'd be the project manager and creative director. So I'd understand, like, or if I can't step in, where are they struggling in the communication, and then I'd be the creative director. So then you hire a project manager and a freelancer, and just the three of you is quite small, but it just means that actually, if I've got the process done, that the project manager can manage the talent and I can oversee it all, then you can take on extra work, and each time you just scale up. So you just, with each job that comes in, you take on a freelancer, and they run the project with the project manager. And then there's obviously a limit of how many projects a project manager can run at once, but it's such a good exercise for restraint, because you can't step in and do it, and they'll find loads of holes of, like, I didn't understand how to do this, or where do I get those from? And you're like, okay, I'll record a video, I'll show you how to do that, I'll put that in there. It's just really useful.
I know with this type of thing, there's a friend of mine, a previous podcast guest, Joanna Galveo.
Oh
When
yes, yeah.
she when Joanna was pregnant with her little one, this is quite a few years back now. She's got a design agency, and obviously she knew that she would be leaving them to it for an extended period of time to obviously go through the pregnancy, give birth, raise her child. So I believe it's a guy called Greg Hickman, who's also, I think he's been on my podcast. I believe he has. He's very much into products and systems and all this sort of stuff. So she actually worked on a new business at that point where it was productized, systematized web design. So they had set in stone templates. Everything was this is what the product is. Do you want it? Yes or no? Pretty much. It was very much set in stone. But she was able to, step away for an extended period of time, and everything just ran smoothly like clockwork. And it's why I'm very much a favor in sort of these productized things. So I think it's interesting that it's come up here again, and as one of the lessons that you picked up from the
I only
hotel.
had it through mistakes. So when I got the hotel job, clearly it's nepotism, it's a family business. I don't know what I'm doing particularly, So I've got to learn pretty quickly. And for me, you learn best through mistakes. So for me to understand it and not make mistakes, I would develop systems. So the one that was the worst was we had, there was a double booking. And what we would normally do, we would write everything down and we would sort of check. You take the booking, you take the deposit, you write it in the book. And I'd forgotten to write it in the book. And it was August, and the Sakova couple came in, and they were like, "Well, no, we're staying here. We've got the confirmation, the deposit's been taken," and they weren't in the book. And I remember Ben, who was working for me, he said, "I'm really sorry, Thad. You're going to have to come over. They're furious." And there was nothing I could do because it was my mistake, and so I had to pay for them to stay somewhere else. I paid for all their taxis. It was, and it's also a bit embarrassing. But it taught me so much about I don't want this to happen again. So I built a new process for taking bookings. And we never had a double booking. And that involved going through all the bookings that we'd already taken for the next month so that there was no mistakes, double checking everything, signing it off when you did it. So like there was everything. And because we did that, we never had a double booking. And so I do feel that it's sometimes out of necessity. Something will happen that will infuriate you or embarrass you like me. And you go, right, I'm not having this again. It's awful. So that's when it comes from. But it's, yeah, I think it's definitely the backbone. I think that what I would like to, for me, the focus would be if the system runs well, then that frees me up mentally to focus on the creative. So that's the thing. So I want to spend less time doing the admin. And now I have a VA who does all that for me. But it's very much, if I'm mentally freed up to do the creative work, that's the bit where I focus on, kind of thing.
Cool. Okay. So we're about half an hour into this conversation. It's gone really fast. So I want to spend the rest of this talking through your design studio at Oakmont House.
Yeah.
So I think something that's important for listeners or people watching this to understand is that you had this background of information prior to building your own company. You'd worked in the hotel sector, got loads of lessons from that about business. You mentioned about that you had a coach during that time as well. You'd learned design through doing a degree and you continued to train in that skill. So there's all this like years of understanding business design and everything like that. So now you're at this point where you want to start your agency. You're not going in blind. You're going in with experience, knowledge, understanding, and now you want to build something. I want to sort of talk through the steps that you took. So when you decided that you wanted to build this agency, can you talk through like, what were the steps? Like, and I mean, go as far as why did you come up with a name, all that sort of stuff. I think people would like to know that.
One thing I would say, like, is in like none of this. It was always just you reach a point where. Not supply and demand, but it's kind of just it's natural evolution. It's not really too predetermined. So there wasn't like a grand master plan. It just was a case of its situation at the time. So it was really just like I said, I can look back and see it. But I think what I would say is, which I think it might be more helpful to your audience, which I've said to a lot of people, is the two things I wished I'd done earlier, which I would absolutely do, and I still recommend to people to do is one is to become a client. So like if you and I were starting out and thinking of working, and I was like, do you know what? Let's pay each other £1,000 to design each other's logos. And the exercise of like, I give you 1,000 to design mine and vice versa. What that does is, even though we know we're going to get our money back, giving over the money changes you. And you become the nightmare client you complain about very quickly. So like I mean, Fawlty Towers is an old fashioned reference, but I became Basil Fawlty in about a week and a half. Because there's so many problems and I've changed how I feel. So when I have to pay someone money, well, for the whole time that money is out of my bank account, I'm wondering, what are they doing? And all of a sudden, I'm going to see it through the client's eyes. And that's going to teach me so much, because I know how a designer feels. They're like, look, I'm working really hard. I'll be in touch when I've got something worth showing. But from a client's point of view, you're thinking, I gave you the money, what's happening? And so you learn that actually, if I can get better at like letting the client into what I'm doing, little updates, little like videos or snippets from behind the scenes, or like having conversations with them, I'm going to be a much better designer. So for me, being a client it was really good because it taught me that when agencies would come and pitch to us and they knew nothing about our business. So I remember we had an agency saying, "Oh, your website for the hotel isn't very good. We can do you a better one." I was like, "I know it's not very good. I built it in iWeb, so I know it's crap. But if you look at our bookings, we're full. So I can't really go anywhere. So why should I pay £5,000 for a new website? I mean, I know why you want to sell it to me, but do you understand anything about my business?" And they didn't. They just wanted to sell what they sold. And so you realize that they're slightly tone deaf because they've not taken any time to research or take any interest in what my problems are. So if they'd said, "We understand that out of season, hotels can struggle. We could think of ways that we could make the website help with that, get different bookings, maybe offer different services, host masterminds, whatever." If they came with solutions, I'd be like, "Oh, this is good. You're more like a business partner rather than a client designer relationship." So the first thing is always try and be the client, because it will teach you what it feels like to be the client, and you will build that empathy back into your process and how you work. And I find that I've not met many designers who've been clients. And like I said, that is a really good learning curve. And the second thing would be, if you are working in an agency while you're still in that agency, before you think you're going to be leaving, go and talk to everyone in the agency. So if you want to learn about what goes into a contract, go and talk to the HR department. If you haven't got a contract, go and ask them, "Have you got any templates, or do you know anyone who can help me get a contract?" If you want to talk about money, how much should I be charging? How do I organise my finances? Go and talk to the accounts department. Where do you get clients? Go and talk to your boss. How do you get them? Networking, advertising. Go and talk to your creative director. Go and ask, how much would you be paying for someone like me if you were hiring? Where would you go? Is it headhunters? Do you look at portfolios online? What do you look for in portfolios? All the things you need to give you a head start in running your agency will come from all the people you're currently working with. And if you're making the effort to talk to them regularly and being sociable and you're liked, then when you do go, then their network becomes an extension of your network, and they will try and help you out. And we all know that networking is so valuable as far as getting more opportunities than we can on my own. And I say to students who are graduating, if you're in your second year and you're thinking, "Well, I don't graduate till the end of my third year, I've got ages." I remember at Kingston, it was the 5 best people they always say the best agencies come to Kingston and they will headhunt the talent. And they do. Don't get me wrong. But unless you are the top 5 people on your course, the rest of you, including me, you're just in with everyone else. And you're like, "Oh, but I thought I was going to get an internship at Pentagram or Johnson Banks or wherever." And it's like, no, they've already gone. So you realize, "Oh, I don't know anyone. So I'm starting from scratch." So I've said to everyone, including my kids, if you start to reach out to people in your industry now, a year ahead of the time, when it comes to graduating, you've already built all the connections. And who are they going to want to hire? Someone they know, they've been chatting with through LinkedIn every now and then. They're going to hire that person versus someone they don't know who's got a nice portfolio. And so for me, it's this thing of, a lot of the planning can be done now that will give you an advantage to sort of testing out how you want to start your studio. So I wanted to raise that because I never did it. And I used to work with some of the most talented people, and you just kind of go, why didn't I just go and say, "Have you got 10 minutes for a coffee? I want to pick your brain." I never did it. I just sat in my office with the guy I work with.
It's such good advice, that everything that you dropped there in the last few minutes is so valuable. Because I think for me, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now if I didn't work for a company for 11 years and scale up to end up being on the team of directors. I didn't think about going around and picking people's brains. I wish I did now, because I could probably have learned a lot more about things like sales and accounting and project management and stuff like that. But I did pick up stuff along the way, whether I knew it or not. So I think that's some of the best advice I've heard for anyone that wants to do their own thing. I think too many people.
The other thing I would say, which
Continue.
I've also talked to students about, is this concept of the second portfolio. So when we were trying to get a job in advertising, the way you would eventually get a job is you had to go, because I learned advertising from scratch. I didn't have a formal training. So we learned through crits, basically reviews of our portfolio being said, "This is all crap, but that one's okay." And you learn. What you realize is that And I talk to the students is that if you find nice people, most people, if they say, look, can I show you my portfolio? And you want to show them the best, most finished version of the work you've got, but it won't do anything for them. So a second portfolio is the work you're working on currently, which isn't quite finished. So what we would do is, and I'd encourage anyone to do this, you'd go to someone and go, I really love your work. I'd love help with my portfolio. I've got a few projects I'm working on. I'd love some feedback if you've got 5-10 minutes. Most creative people are nice enough to go, yeah, happy to help. They'll give feedback on the work. And again, because it's not finished, that allows them to contribute because they can see like, oh, that's quite good. I would change this, do this. And then you go, look, if I do those changes, can I come back and show them to you? Do you mind? And they'll be like, yeah, fine. Because nobody ever comes back. But if you go back with those changes, they'll be blown away. And then when you go back, you go, oh, I'm really pleased. Thank you for helping that one. I've actually got another one I'm working on. Have you got 5 minutes? And if you tend that your second portfolio, your first one is your polished one that you would send to everyone as like, this is my best work. The second one is the Trojan horse to get in the door to build the relationship with the creative director. And the reason why it matters is similar to what I said is when you're hiring someone, when you look at loads of portfolios, you don't know what the person's like to work with or how long it took them to do the work or at what level they were working at. Versus their work, if you've worked with someone, they know exactly how you take feedback, how like punctual you are, how friendly you are, how creative you are. They'll always go with like the portfolio is not bad, but they're great, so I'm going to get them in. And the second portfolio is the thing that you're probably already working on anyway, but you're scared to share publicly. That is the perfect excuse to reach out to people to build those relationships. And then you're like, oh, okay. So it's like even today, I'm on a thing called Talk to a Creative Director. And I spoke to a guy and he was struggling to get in with a place. He's a really nice guy. And I'm already, my brain is like thinking, how could I help introduce him to someone? So the people I know will amplify his reach indirectly because I like what he's trying to do. So I feel the second portfolio, which people are all working on who are listening, you want to share something that isn't finished because it allows the other person to contribute to it. And if they contribute to it, they have slight ownership in it. So they're more invested into how it goes. So when you bring it back, they'll feel like kind of pleased because you've listened to them. Your changes have made it, their changes have made it better. And they've actually gone, oh, this is good. So I would say that's the other thing to consider. Loads of us are sitting on ideas that we don't think are finished. And the mistake is to go, I must get it perfect before I share it. But in doing so, it's already finished. And nobody wants to be part of an idea that they can't contribute to.
Man, that's so good. I mean, when I think back to designers that are memorable within the Logo Geek community, it has always been the people that share something, want some input, and then actually listen and take it on board and make those updates. Because like you said, I think most people, most designers in particular, that when they share their work, it's the finished thing.
Yes.
And yeah, you can give feedback on it, but they don't really want it. They just want to show it off. But actually, sharing something that's not complete and reaching out to somebody that you admire. And I found from my own personal experience that pretty much anyone within the design industry is accessible. Sometimes you need a little bit of effort, but pretty much everyone is accessible in some some way. So going in and asking for advice and making updates to your work makes you so memorable. That's such
And actually, as you said,
advice.
following through to do it because people don't, and they don't expect you to do it. So that's the other thing. So you are, by the very nature of just doing the changes they recommended and going back to them, you're immediately putting yourself in the top 1% of people. And they know that, well, you're quite good to work with because you take feedback well, you're open-minded to making changes. If you make the changes quite quickly and you're like in touch again, it shows you're quite efficient and practical. These are all factors that are not conveyed through a portfolio. It's the same also, actually, as what we were saying when we're at Palooza about your network. Quite often the people you're working with, they could end up somewhere amazing. And just by being friends with them, as they grow in stature over 10 years, you'll be like, oh my God, I know so-and-so at this agency. And it's like, well, that person to you is quite formal, but I used to work with them. And you kind of go, the other advantage of making an effort to get to know people and keeping in touch is inherently they will become more senior and more connected over time. And I think that all of those things, that the more you communicate with the people you're currently working with or reaching out to people and using the creative idea as the excuse, as you said, people are lovely, and also we're suckers for it. If someone goes, "Have you got 5 minutes?" You're like, "Yeah, I'd love to help. This is what I like doing." But those, so I would say I wanted to share those because those are things that I learned retroactively advising my kids and advising other students. So it's the things of like I wished I'd done. So my journey is not that, but if I advise people and if I could live it again, I look back and go, God, you really, because I talk to a lot of people I used to work with now far more than I did when I worked next door to them, which is stupid.
It's such great advice. I really hope that somebody that's in the position where they are working for an agency and they do want to start building a studio, I really hope they are listening to this and take on board the advice because, like I was saying, when I used to work for the company and I was there for a long time and I did pick it up just being in the same room, but not to the degree that you are describing here. And I know if I just reached out to those people and asked, they would help. And I love this second portfolio idea. I've never heard that before, but that's such a brilliant idea. And I know that would definitely make somebody memorable. And like if you reached out to some creative director and they know that you was looking for a job and they know what you was like to work with, who are they going to think of when like a position comes up? They might just reach out to you and say, by the way, we're looking for somebody. I'd love for you to join us if you're available. So I think that's such good advice.
Well, it's funny because I always think like the CV is like the last resort of a job. Like, so I always feel that when someone leaves in an agency, they know inherently that someone's going before they physically leave the job. Therefore, they ask around, who do we know? They ask headhunters. And if they can't find anyone after all of that, they might go online to a CV and if you're applying on a CV with AI and everything nowadays, like it's going to scan you for things that aren't, they don't represent you in your best nature. So what we learned when we were trying to get a job is, again, it's weird things like we would hand our portfolio in. It was a black, like A3 leather portfolio. And I remember once the receptionist would say, "Oh, just put it behind there." And you'd go through the door and there'd be about 35 identical black portfolios. So we were like, well, how can we make them choose ours? So we put it in an antique suitcase because you're going to go, well, I want whatever's in that is going to be, I'm going to pick that ahead. So we're already giving ourselves a slight advantage. And then inside that, we had our work and then we had a little book of silly ideas as well. And people like, the work's okay, but the book of ideas is really fun. And so it's all this thing about like, I just want to get noticed for the right things. And so, like I said, I think that would be, if I could go back, I would do exactly that. Reach out to people, keep in touch and use your second portfolio, which you're already sitting on. Because people are they're very receptive. If you've got fun ideas, it's like if you shared a great idea with 10 people and they all said, it's great, but it's not for us. You could think, oh, that's a failure. But now you're building a reputation as the person that has interesting ideas. So if you have another one, you can go, "Oh, do you remember me? I sent you that crazy idea. Well, I've got another one. If you've got 5 minutes," they'll be like, "Well, okay." And you never know, this might be better. And it's kind of like nobody does that. But you're slowly, when they need someone, they go, "We need an interesting idea. Who was that guy who said us that? What's he doing?" And so I think that's the thing of we're sitting on loads of great work and we can reach out to loads of people. So I would just definitely have more conversations and share your work. Don't be afraid to share it.
I love this. Okay, I feel like I want to just dig into more of these tidbits. To be honest, like you're offering such good advice. Let's. I do want to spend a little bit of time going through your agency. So,
I can tell you the reason behind the name, which is a crap reason, if you want to know that one. So I don't really like the name, but I remember what I did was at the time, because I was working in hospitality, I was very much thinking, well, I run a hotel. This gives me a big advantage if I want to do hospitality branding. The issue was people would come to me with a whole range of work because when you work in advertising, you work on loads of different brands and I would get loads of different projects. So my intention was I want to do an agency that does restaurant and hotel branding because that's the industry I know really well. So I was thinking, and I name things differently so I can get into how I name businesses, but I was like, well, I probably need to sound like I fit within that industry was the only way I came up with the name. So I looked up on Wikipedia like the most expensive roads in the world and expensive places. And I basically just forced two together until I could get the domain names. And I was like, oakmonthouse.com is available. I'll take it. That'll do. But I think partly because it was so arbitrary is why I'm not that attached to it. But it's too late now. But yeah.
I really like that you don't like it because you are moving with it anyway. I think this is one of the biggest things that once you like, don't let a name hold you back. Because from my perspective,
I've had a lifetime of this. Do you know what I mean? Nobody.
I totally got what you was trying to do because I got it. It's like, okay, you've worked in the hotel hospitality sector. Your website, and I know, you know, prior to having this conversation, you mentioned that, you know, that you're bored of the website, but I totally got the vibe that you're trying to get. That when I came on there, it's very high end. It feels like a company that's specifically targeting high end hospitality type businesses. And even though you don't like it, it feels to me right for the target audience.
Which is what I was intending. I felt like it sounds like it fits. It could be the name of a little boutique place. And so that was more what I was going for. So I just was like I said, but I wanted to be quite random. So I had like Astoria Palms and Belrose House and like loads of different names. It was just quite funny. But that was it. I just thought if I find a solution that fits and feels relevant, then I feel like I fit in. And then having had so much experience, when I have chats with them, it will give me an advantage. But I never needed to. I was always quite busy, so I never decided. I mean, like you said, I got to stick with it now. So there we go.
And rolling with it, and since you don't, are you planning to change it at some point, or just roll with it because it works?
My accountant would kill me because she's got everything registered in that name, so I think it would cause too much trouble. But I think no, because it's also. It's just one of those things. It's naming is very peculiar, but I think we get too obsessed with it, like too fixated on it ourselves. We're too close to it. So I realize it's fine and it will do, and it's probably better for me to put my energy elsewhere. As you said, you kind of got to go with it and just accept it. It's not terrible. It's not like I had a blog years ago where I would showcase creative highlights that I found for the agency, and it was called Limited Fun. And my boss loved that, and I don't know how I came up with that. And I was like, it's okay. But it's like, these are just random things that you kind of go, I don't know what to say. It's okay. It's 5 bits of creative a day. And I quite liked it. It was limited fun. It wasn't endless. But again, it was just, I feel that it's always probably what goes behind it is more important than the actual name itself.
Okay. So I'm also aware, based on what you described earlier, that you essentially started with a room. Is that right? That you literally had a location for this design studio before you started it? Or did you come up with the studio name and idea and have
So no,
it
was just a case of I just wanted to come up with a name that felt appropriate. And that was it. I know that when I first started, what I got really fixated, I wanted to get an office space out of the Hoxton in Southwark. There's it's called what's it called? Working From at the Hoxton, and it's really beautiful, like really cool little it's a hotel as well as like a co-working space. But in the end, I just felt actually the costs of doing it and the traveling with the train, it wasn't worth it. So I had to detach. My ego wanted it, but I was aware that I'd have to pay for that, and it wasn't worth the extra stress. So I've always tried to keep it quite low. And also, it's the thing of you realise clients are very easy working remotely and everything. I had to do, it sounds ridiculous, but I'm trying to think when it was. I think it was when we moved, but I did a remote campaign to go across Times Square, like all remotely over like WhatsApp. And it was kind of like you realise that this is all completely possible because we're all connected and we know what we need to do. So you kind of go, the office thing is less relevant, if you know what I mean. Where I would say, again, being strategic is I think it would be more sensible to buy an annual membership to Soho House and spend time there because of the people you're going to bump into and the clients you're going to get just from being around. I think that's more advantageous because if you're working out of Soho House 3 times a week and you keep bumping into the same people, they're going to be wealthy people with successful businesses. So there's a good chance it's a great network to be part of. So you don't even need an office, really.
So do you currently work from an office, or do you just have like a space at home where you work?
So we built an extension at home, which I'm sat in. So I work in that, and it's kind of it does the job really, kind of thing. I got really fixated on wanting an office for a long time, but then it just wasn't really practical because I'd just take a space to work within whatever house we were in, and you realise that clients weren't bothered, and I was happy to travel to them. So I think it was just this thing of, I think it was a hangover. Like always thought you had to have a cool office, but it doesn't. The work's what matters. So I've
Yeah,
given up that. So
exactly.
like I said, it's a nice extension. It's a bit too hot in the winter, a bit too cold in the summer. Sorry, cold in the winter, hot in the summer. But yeah, it's a nice space to work. It's quite quiet, and if anything, I'm happy to visit clients and go travelling into London to meet them. So that's fine.
Yeah, I think that's an important point because it's very easy to believe that you need like a dedicated office space, and I've done that. So in like a previous place I had, I did have a dedicated room that was the office. I've done the co-working spaces and all that sort of stuff. But I think something that like really surprised me early on, I because I've been doing things like my podcast, I've been lucky enough to meet up with some well-known designers. And there was this guy I met up with in London, and it was funny. I remember I went to his place, and it fascinated me how famous designs, like well-known identity design, well-known logos, were literally designed on this little desk in the corner of his bedroom.
Yeah,
And that always fascinated me, that like that it's quite easy to assume that that work is done in these fancy design studios and these offices and all this sort of stuff, but at the end of the day you just need a computer and
yeah.
your ideas.
Well, I think that's true though, isn't it? Because if you look at like agencies in movies, they're always set. I was watching The Office earlier, and I like watching that. And Dunder Mifflin's in Manhattan in some big glass office, and you're like, that's the facade, isn't it? It's a big flash. I used to work in those big flash shiny agencies. They're great, but yes, as you said, the ideas and the work happens in a small office upstairs or wherever you are. I think for me, it was just. Like I said, the thing that did it for me was I was like, if I have to have an office, I looked at the cost of it, and I was like, well, it's probably about £1,000 a month. That's £12,000 a year. I've got to find a client to pay for that already, and then if I'm going to be doing this, I'm beholden to what work I can take on in order to pay for an office that my ego wants. And often, if it means that the client isn't very exciting but they pay well, then the work I'm doing for that year in order to justify the office I'm not enjoying, and I can't bring people in on the projects because it's not exciting, there's not much opportunity. And you could see this downward spiral of like, my ego wants the office, but in order to provide for it, I'm going to have to do work that I don't want to talk about, which isn't great for anyone. So you're kind of, and then how much am I going to want to really be here? I want control over my time, really. So actually I found, yeah, just to accept it's okay, and actually just meet with people and go and meet them. And actually they appreciate, if anything, the fact you're willing to go and travel to them. They love that. So you go, actually, that's fine with me. So
And out of curiosity, so do you just work for yourself? I know earlier you mentioned about having a VA. How
yeah.
does that work? Do you hire staff
Well, yeah.
to
So I've
do
not
additional
got like
work?
salaried staff because I think it's project dependent. So usually, I suppose Julia is pretty solid. So I'm on a monthly retainer with her, so she helps with everything for me. And then depending on what the project is and the size of it, I'll bring people in as and when's needed. Really, I'm in that period of I'm doing the branding work and I'm launching the Creative Heist. Pardon me. So there's a thing of I'm sort of in between doing both. But yeah, normally I would scale up and scale down based on what's required. And it depends on, like I said, I work with a friend on a project. It's like a sort of big wedding build out in Texas. So it's kind of like she'd be over there, I'd be over here. So for me, it's so easy to work with anyone anywhere that it doesn't really matter. And I'd rather have the flexibility to hire the right people for the project. And do it that way. So it's a case of, like I said, I did the hotel for years, having people salaried, and it's different. But I just feel, again, I didn't want the added pressure of. I just saw so many small agencies on that treadmill of having to get work in to pay for everyone, and the work was suffering, and so people weren't enjoying create it. And it's like what you've started has become a bit of a chain, like a chain around your neck or whatever they call it. I'm always very careful to go like, where do I need talent to do the things I'm bad at, which is what Julia does for me. And like I said, I just hire people as and when I need them based on what's required. Because the client, like we did loads of videos for a client the other weekend, so I flew in my videographer for that. So, but I wouldn't bring him into every job if he's not required.
That's a really nice way of working because it allows you to scale without the added pressure of needing to pay for a team of people and all that sort of stuff. So I think that's it's nice to know that that's a possibility for some people.
I think it's very different, isn't it? Because I've worked for myself for so long. I understand the salary concept is really reassuring. But I didn't want the extra pressure. So I think it would be, that was also the thing. And also when I first started in Cornwall, I didn't feel there wasn't enough business, and I wasn't probably active enough in the whole network, because basically your role is changing. So you're going, I'm either working remotely with lots of clients from all over the world, or I'm now doing local clients. I'm having to do the networking, the marketing, the schmoozing, my role is changing, and it's just to pay other people. And people are not easy always. So sometimes it's better for everyone if you can pay them quite well to do a good project,
Yeah. I think that's nice to know. I work in a similar way. Well, rather, I don't have an interest in scaling a team. Mm-hmm. But if there was, a small job that I wanted somebody to do so that I could still help my client, then I would find somebody within my network of designers who could support with that. And I also think and I've got the feeling that you're similar to this, is you always need to remember why you're doing what you're doing. And for me, one of the reasons why I want to work from home is so that I can be there for my daughter. That's like my little one is the reason why I decided to finally take the leap, because I wanted to be at home when she took her first steps, said her first words, and and be there to collect her from school, and just be in her life in a way that people can't,
but that's
when they're tied into these 9 to 5 jobs.
Yeah, you're very lucky to recognize that early on, because I think that I knew that like when I first started to think about leaving advertising, was that because you would come home so late, you were constantly sort of missing out on seeing your kids, and you're very aware of that. But I remember I used to feel very inadequate doing the school run, because I was always like, I'm stuck down here in Cornwall, it's raining, what am I doing? Like, all my mates are off doing cool exotic shoots, making ads, and I kind of always felt I left advertising too early and I never fulfilled my potential. And you end up sort of very bitter, quite jealous and quite annoyed. And it took me a long time to get over it. But it's this thing of where I really appreciate it now is, so my kids are 20 and 18, so they're both off at uni, but we're immensely close because of exactly what you've talked about, the fact that I was able to do the boring school runs, but actually it's those little consistencies of spending time together is what builds that bond. And now we're immensely close because of it, because of basically whenever they wanted to talk to you, you were actually there. So you can always work when they're in bed, you can work when they're at school. And for me, having that control over your time to be able to be available when you need to be is probably the most important thing. So yeah, I totally get it. Like I said, I remember I heard an example when Joe Rogan was talking about how he built his podcast. He just said it's like building a wall of paint, but just one layer of paint at a day. And it's like you look at a minuscule layer that dries hard, and you paint on top of it again. And over years, it grows. But that's your relationship with your children. You can't fast forward that. You can't buy that. You can't sort of cheat it or download it. It's just time compounding over time. And that's so valuable. And I think, as I said, it's why now we're so close. So when they went away to uni, we didn't miss them, because we're still sending memes to each other. We're still talking. They come home and visit. Where a lot of people have said, oh, it'll be tough. You'll be lonely. They're gone, they'll never come back. And it's like, well, that's not true at all. We're just like mates, and it's really good that and I think that only happens if you can build a life that enables the freedom for you to be present a lot. And then some of those moments will really matter, but at least you were there for them, kind of thing.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate that I'm in the position where I can be at the front of the queue. That's one of my deal breakers. Like no client, nobody can take that away from me. Like I always make sure that I'm close to the front of the queue so that when my little one comes out, she does this thing where she walks out and I can see her looking, and there's this little slight worried look on her face, and then she spots, and her face lights up, and I like, it's one of my things that I have to do that. That's no client can take that away. No amount of money can take that away. That's a deal breaker. Like, that has to happen.
That's so
So
important
yeah.
that you recognise that, and I think, as I said, you'll benefit. It is like the stock thing; it will increase in value over time, and you can't get that back. As I said, I've got friends who they work all the time, and that's the way their life has panned out. They're not as close to their children. I've got a friend who,
It's easy to do. I've
yeah,
been there. I've done the long hours. The waking up at 6 a.m. and thinking that working the extra 2 hours at the end of the day will somehow get recognized. But what I found is, doing those longer hours, it becomes expected of you. At
yeah,
least
it's
that
just
was how it
standard. Yeah,
was. Yeah, it just becomes, Ian can do that.
Ian loves
Ian can fit
working
in that
late.
extra work. Yeah, Ian likes work. Ian likes doing these projects. And, when you look back on that, um, I recognize more what I lost by sacrificing that time, and well, it did in part get recognized because I did get annual pay rises, so it did get recognized to some degree, but it was never worth it. Like, I spent years and years and years grinding away working for somebody else, and yeah, looking back now, is if I could go back and the moment 5 comes and stand up and go home, I would change that.
Yeah.
So for me, I think it's so important to, when you work for yourself, to understand the reason why you're doing it, and it has to be something that's not work related,
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
and not money related. Like, it shouldn't be a financial thing, because money is just a means to an end. It's not it's not the outcome that you want. Anyway, so we've been speaking for over an hour now. So there's so much that we could talk about, so we're probably going to have to book another session at a slightly later date
Yeah, happy to do that.
to continue. Thad, it's been so great to spend time with you today. There's been so much great advice along the way. We got to know you, we got to know your journey, but there's just been some, mic drop moments in this, which has been like, damn, that's great advice. So I found this really useful, and I hope that people listening or watching have enjoyed this as well.
No, it's been a pleasure, Ian. I always love talking to you, and like I said, you're very good at what you do in interviewing and getting those weird stories out of me. So if it helps anyone, I'll be pleased. So thank you.
I'm sure it will. All right then. So I will hit that stop button.